This is a test, trying to set levels and understand how to use this thing. This is Little P, shouting out a message to all y'all that used to know Big G. Now, Big G was Gary, my big bro. He passed away on February 7th, and I just finally had to let y'all know. Now, I've written this tribute to my brother Big G for all the days that he rescued me. Yet some days I needed rescue from him, because as brothers, you know, we through thick and thin. Now, every morning when I open my eyes, 6 o'clock about the time I rise, the way I was living was always in stasis, or getting ass whippings on a regular basis. Bobbing and weaving while ducking and screaming, my mama coming through the door. Vengeance with a lion's roar. Something about the night before, and the mess we made on her clean floor. G is back against the wall. A sacrificial lamb must fall. Little P was next in line, and I wasn't having it. Not my time. Paula and Bonnie now caught in Mama's grip. Oops, too late for Bonnie. There goes Mama's switch across her hips. Now when Mama would rear her angry head, we kids would all hide under the bed. G, his back against the wall, in first position. Little P was next to him. I knew the mission. Next came Paula squirming and trying to hide. And last came Bonnie, and she always cried, 'cause she was the sacrifice. And as we pushed our feet, Bonnie's legs and Mama's hands would meet, and Bonnie would let out a mighty wail as Mama's switch lashed out across her tail. Now, even though he was my brother, see, at times G would try to smother me. With that foolish grin looking all out of place, he would try to hold me down, and he'd try to sit on my face. And then I'd look around and see that big round brow coming down. Now, Gary was Big G, and I was Little P, because I was named after my dad, Big P. And he was Paul Hall, the original OG. Now, standing next to Gary, I was smaller and lighter. He was bigger and stronger, and always a fighter. If someone refused to give me a pass, G would put his foot in the crack of their ass. And I'd get a slap on the head just for general principle. But it was worth it to me, 'cause he was invincible. And man, with the ladies, he was always a player. And at basketball, he was also a slayer. The high school team's most valuable player. And he had straight A's. Just another layer of his charming life without a naysayer. G even tried his hand at acting. And it's a natural fact, with a runaway performance as the lead in the Cheshire Cat. And his charisma was infectious on all occasions, as Mom and Bonnie clapped at his standing ovation. And you know, G was busting rhymes way ahead of his time. He wrote Fat Phyllis in 1969. Now, she was a waitress at Kamutsi's restaurant, and G was a busboy, and she was no debutante. He wrote, "Every morning I'd see her rise, about 5'2", weighing 285. Kind of broad at the shoulders and fat at the hips. And she cried like a baby when she never got tips. Fat Phyllis." G was built, he was handsome, and he dressed quite dapper. He was way ahead of his time. I'm sure he could have been a rapper. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. This story does include someone else. You know, I was about 10 years old at the time when my Aunt Janetta set us all down in the line. And she said, "Listen up now, 'cause I got something to say. Your mama's pregnant." And G shouted, "No way! Mama's too old and her hair's turning gray." And we all just laughed and went outside to play. 'Cause I never even knew my mama was pregnant. But I was just too young and probably just too ignorant. 'Cause the whole time I never saw a baby bump. 'Cause my mama had humps and bumps and mo lumps. And we were not that perceptive because we were still too little to even notice that Mama had gone to the hospital. So we all thought that Janetta was lying. In her face too, my baby brother Brian. Now that's when I noticed things started to change. After that, nothing was ever the same. With all the excitement and all the joy, Mama was ecstatic with her new baby boy. And Big G's name rarely got mentioned, as my baby brother Brian got all the attention. "He's so cute, he's so funny, look at those chubby cheeks." While Gary's name rarely got mentioned for weeks. And there was something else that started to stick. It happened suddenly, rather quick. On a chalkboard, Bonnie tried to write Brian's name, but she mixed up the letters and she spelled brain. Well, brain this and brain that. G just couldn't understand how he was no longer the one in command. He had to break out. He had to expand. No longer a little boy, but now a little man. And Brian, you're lucky that you weren't around, or you would have been a victim of the big round brown. And as me and my sisters studied brain's eccentricities, G hit the streets, searching its possibilities. And in what to me seemed like a blink of an eye, I barely recognized G. I said, "Who's this tough guy?" He said, "Listen up, little P, and listen up quick, 'cause I ain't got time for none of your bullshit." He said, "I got my own room now, and if I catch you in it, I'm gonna whoop your ass in a New York minute." Well, that's when our relationship drastically changed. And after that, nothing was ever the same. He was a year and a half older than my what a range. I could no understand him, and I couldn't engage. I was still a punk kid, and he had entered the teenage. Well, the next 15 years for us got a little crazy. And some of those times still remain quite hazy. Rumors were circulating that we were a little shady. You know, but the sun shines bright as my memory surmises. It was touch and go at times, but life's full of surprises. And one of the best times occurred in Miami, when G and Linda flew in, and he said, "Man, this city's clammy." Fuzzy and I were working for Ozzy, and we had backstage passes to the Black Sabbath posse. Well, the music was great, and the crowd was wild. And Big G and Linda wore the biggest smiles. Then some idiot broke into the catwalk backstage. He went 3 floors up and climbed out onto the cage. A protective shield between the crowd and the stage that the venue needed for the sport highlight. Well, the dude lost his grip and began to slide. And Sabbath launched into the song Snowblind. Well, I heard a loud crack as the dude hit the floor. And the band and the crowd heard it too, that's for sure. 'Cause everyone thought that dude had broke his back. But he stood up and he waved as the cops attacked. Well, they wrestled the poor kid to the ground. And the crowd shouted, "Boo!" with a thunderous sound. But Big G just threw back his head and smiled. and said, "Man, are all the shows like this? Because this is pretty wild." Well, I could probably go on like this for days, remembering my brother's glory days, bragging on him and shouting his praise about how he became a father, a real family man, day after day working his plan. And yes, he had decided to settle down. Georgie, Melissa, and G were his crown. And for years, we lost touch. So those times are a blur. Each with our own paths that had to occur. Like standing in front of an oncoming train. Time runs right over you without refrain. Remembering the good times and forgetting the bad. Love without judgment is all that we have. But G would say, "Bro, no. Don't bore people to death. Or make their eyes glaze over because you won't take a breath. Because your stories tend to go on forever. And I know you think you're funny, but you're not that clever. And see, right now, you're doing it again. Just say, 'I love my brother Gary. I'm going to miss him.' The end."